Welcome to Legal AF with Court Accountability Action. I'm Mike Sachs. I'm joined by my wonderful colleague, Lisa Graves, and we're here to tell you about the de facto denaturalization of toddlers in this country. That's what we've come to now. So just last week, Lisa, at the very end of last week, a MAGA judge, Judge Terry Doughty in Louisiana, who never missed an opportunity to strike down some, attempt to stop the spread of COVID, the virus, and misinformation during the Biden administration, he told the Trump DOJ that he didn't trust what they were saying to him about their deporting, and deporting is not even the right word because it's a citizen, deporting a 2-year-old girl who is an American citizen under the birthright citizenship promise of our 14th Amendment of this Constitution. That was an astounding moment. I don't know if you read that order when it came out. It was just 2 pages, and it used the term illegal immigrant. It used the term Gulf of America. This guy was showing his Trumpist bona fides, and yet still he said, I really don't believe you, Trump, about what you're doing.
Yeah, I read it because you flagged it, Mike. And I really appreciate your sending along the order. You are on top of these cases, and it really is extraordinary. And you're right. It's not a deportation. It's for U.S. citizens. It's an extraordinary act. And in that case, that judge was considering a petition while he was also in the middle of handling a jury trial. But he gets this emergency piece of paper. He's looking at it. And as he's trying to sort out what's happening in the case, the Trump administration is already in the process of removing these American citizens from the United States to a country they've never been in, that they weren't born in, they're not citizens of. And meanwhile, their family, the family of these American citizen children, they were trying to figure out how to, make sure that the kids could stay with relatives because one of the kids is fighting cancer. It's just an extraordinary tale of outrageous actions by this administration. And what I also read was that the mom of these kids had gone in for part of a sort of routine check-in with the Department of Homeland Security, was, and was seized along with her children at that moment. And the administration officers apparently knew these were citizens and removed them anyway without any process for them, without appointing some sort of guardian to protect their rights, their interests as U.S. citizens. It's just an extraordinarily brazen act of defiance of the Constitution's command, which in its very first sentence of the 14th Amendment, as you know, says that all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens of the United States. Couldn't be plainer language. The very first sentence of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution.
And Lisa, it could not be plainer language, but of course, this Trump administration, in its day one executive order to strip the citizenship of people born in this country to non-citizen parents, except for like a few very small exceptions, this administration is trying to rewrite that long established understanding of what it means to be a citizen in this country when you are born here. And a lot of the commentary about this case, I haven't seen anyone else talk about how what's happening here is Trump's attempt in these particular removals, these expulsions, to try to get around the nationwide injunctions against his effectuating that executive order that now the Supreme Court will be hearing oral argument about on May 15th in just over 2 weeks to decide whether those nationwide injunctions themselves are too broad, but also they may get to the merits too about the constitutionality of Trump's executive order itself. So this is what's going on between the lines of this particular egregious assault on our Constitution. And I want to step back for a second and actually look at these orders. Those watching, all of you guys, you will see it in the links here. They're very short orders. The first one on Friday was 2 pages. The one that came out on this week, I believe on Monday, was 3 pages. And it catches you up on this situation that Judge Doughty is now dealing with. That, again, even he, who is a MAGA judge, a Trump judge from the first Trump administration. Trump hasn't nominated any judges for the second administration. Not sure why, other than perhaps he thinks he's a king even above the judges he appoints. But either way, this is how Judge Doughty explained what happened. Right? VML, who's the child who's in question in these cases, and Lisa mentioned 2 other children, ages 4 and 7. The 4-year-old has cancer and was also removed without any consultation of her physicians or with her medication. I apologize. I don't know if it's a boy or a girl or what have you, so I'll say child. But VML is a 2-year-old United States citizen. Her mother is not a citizen. She's from Honduras. Her father is implied also to be not a citizen. And in this case, the mother went to the New Orleans field office of ICE for an intensive supervision appearance program, something that she had to do. She was following the law, and they were detained. And the father then allegedly tried to get VML back, but was fearful he'd be deported too. So he purportedly assigned his custodial rights to his sister-in-law, an American citizen. This is where things diverge. Accounts vary, but VML remained in ICE custody despite the father and sister-in-law's efforts. Relevant here, the father alleges that the mother and father agreed on the phone in the presence of an ICE agent to have VML remain in the United States, and the ICE agent allegedly agreed that VML would not be deported. It is ICE's position, though, that VML's mother instead requested VML go with her to Honduras, and ICE provided a note purporting as much. That is the factual dispute the court sought to clarify prior to VML's removal. But what happened? In the next paragraph, I won't read it word for word, but ICE moved forward and whisked in blazing speed VML's mother and VML out of the country before the judge could even consider the habeas petition that came before him. And that seems, along with, again, the expulsion of American citizen without any process, all unconstitutional, that seems to be what pissed off Judge Doughty. So Judge Doughty said, now aware of the alleged note controverting the petitioner's allegations, the court sought to call VML's mother to have her attest that she contested to her child being removed with her. That didn't happen. Now here we are. Indeed, that's where we are with this case. And that's where we are with this country, Lisa. We have this administration performing de facto denaturalizations of those that otherwise would have been caught up under Trump's day one executive order to strip their citizenship, because he cannot do so by law so long as the Supreme Court does not lift the lower court's national injunctions, which are still in place, at least until the court has a final ruling by early this summer. That's where we are. Not a good place to be.
No, it is not a good place to be. And the other part of the factual allegations that are in dispute is that the father was apparently trying to tell the mother the telephone number of a lawyer to call when the call was terminated by ICE, terminated by the government. So in the process of trying to get an attorney involved to defend the rights at stake, ICE apparently, according to the allegation, intervened to stop that from happening. And as you point out, whisked them out of the country without, further process at all. And, there's a couple of things I want to flag that I think are worth noting. One is there is actually a process, in federal law for denaturalization, for legal denaturalization, for people who lie, like Nazi soldiers who come here and lie about being Nazis and get residency here or citizenship here. And so there is an actual legal process for denaturalizing people. It doesn't apply to actual U.S. citizens who were born here. Second of all, there's a longstanding series of cases on the books before this Supreme Court, before the Roberts Court began its march toward this sort of right-wing agenda that Roberts has been imposing. But there's a longstanding set of cases that say even in the criminal setting, if someone were convicted of a serious criminal offense, banishment is a cruel and unusual punishment under the Eighth Amendment. So you can't banish a U.S. citizen from this country as punishment under longstanding U.S. law. And here we have a child, in essence, being banished from the United States, being taken out of the United States, her home country. And the third thing I would flag is, when you look at that executive order, which is one of the ones that someone prepared for Trump to sign immediately after he was inaugurated. We don't know exactly who wrote that executive order, right? But he signed it, right? It was already prepared for him, signed by him on Inauguration Day. That outrageous declaration, that assertion of power, suggests that the president of the United States has basically the power to unilaterally amend the U.S. Constitution by claiming that it doesn't mean what it says and that they can remove anyone born in the United States as of mid-February of this year who was born to someone who they, assert, was here on a temporary visa, like a student visa or something. Now, their underlying claim, I'd love to talk to you about, so I should stop there. We can come back to like the origins of this. But the last thing I would say is Another judge of note, Judge Kuhnauer, who issued that initial ruling on this executive order a few months ago, the one that now the Supreme Court is going to be hearing argument on. Judge Kuhnauer is a Reagan appointee, longstanding federal judge,
Yeah.
someone who is known as a conservative. And he is someone who said that executive order, that assertion of executive power, was flagrantly in violation of the Constitution, just extraordinarily on its face
Yeah.
violative of the plain language of that 14th Amendment. So the facts in this particular instance are really extraordinary, but the backdrop, as you point out, Mike, is also extraordinary and actually unprecedented.
Yeah, totally unprecedented. And this case isn't over yet. Judge Doughty could, in the end, credit what the DOJ says should he get the proper backup from the mother herself saying, yes, I wanted to bring my daughter with me. And if that's the case, fine, right? But the administration did not provide that proof, and it was contested by the party there. And Judge Doughty just wants to find out that there was something going on that he could credit before he sides one way or the other. And that's part of due process. That's part of making sure that we have a process where people are not de facto denaturalized, who were born in this country and have a constitutional right to stay here and not be expelled for no other reason than just the government says so and wants to effectuate some awful anti-human agenda. Right. But beyond that, I want to get to where this could go with the Supreme Court, because the court took this case ostensibly again to narrow or to decide whether they should narrow national injunctions. And that's been a big thing we've been hearing about on the Congress's side. They've been trying to put forward bills in reaction to the judges that have been getting in front of Trump's attempts to impose his will extra legally, unconstitutionally on this country. And of course, the past couple administrations, you had Trump judges doing the same on Biden's policies, and then before that, you had judges getting in the way of Trump's first administration, also attempt to bend and break the law. So this is an issue. The national injunctions are something that we need to deal with, and whether it's done through Congress and legislation, or whether I think the Supreme Court took this case because I think they're against Trump on the merits, but at least a majority is. But perhaps they took this case to get out ahead of Congress and make their own definition of when injunctions can be issued nationally or not. And if so, that's the long time coming. Good on them for trying. Their result might not be something that's very good, though, but at least they're tackling what has become a problem in our justice system as well. That goes across the board. It does. But if they reach the merits and say they do say, okay, Trump, you can have a narrow injunction, and therefore people in vast swaths of this country can be denaturalized without any process under your order, but in other swaths they cannot because the court said so. What if we have this sort of balkanized citizenship situation in this country, but then they go on to say, but your order is unconstitutional? So lower courts go back and figure this out, whatever. I don't know how that'll work procedurally or what, but ultimately that is a confrontation between this court that put Trump in office and helped billionaires buy his slot in office and assume power with him in office. And now a court is telling him, no, it's a leopard you put in office, come and eat your face. And what happens then? It brings us all down with them. And it's a terrible state of affairs that we could be seeing ourselves in by early this summer.
Yeah, that's right. And, the nationwide injunction issue is one that's been around for a long time. And it having nationwide injunctions, there's a certain power to that, to not have this balkanization where federal rights are different in one district or another. And I think that in this instance, like you said, there was no outcry by these Republicans in Congress when Judge Kaczmarek was, unilaterally ordering that mifepristone, the abortion pill, be barred based on his, really weak claims as a judge. That mifepristone was inappropriately approved by the FDA 2 decades ago. They stood by that entirely. I think for me, the real issue the nationwide injunction issue is one that there is a debate over. But for me, the real issue is the forum shopping. And we have that in particular, like in that mifepristone case, where a group is created literally in the district where there's one single judge who happens to be an anti-abortion activist to file a case with him. But we're also seeing it over the course of a couple administrations, actually, not just Trump, but certainly with Trump predominantly, where people are seized, immigrants are seized in one part of the country. They're quickly removed from their family, from where they might know a lawyer who could help them meet with their spouse or their children. And instead, they're taken down to the to a detention center in the Fifth Circuit, so that any habeas petition comes up there, down in that Fifth Circuit, where the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals has been packed by Trump with extremists like James Ho. And so then, a nationwide injunction, coming out of that area, basically forum shop to get immigrants only to have their cases come through that court, I think is deeply problematic, because forum shopping, while it also is a long-standing sort of practice, it's something that is, I think, disfavored, because it basically affirms the idea that we do not have fair justice in this country in some courts. You do not have, for some justices or some judges like Kaczmarek, if he gets a case on abortion, the ink is already basically dry. They know how he's going to rule. The parties do not have a fair hearing before him on the merits of the law, because they're choosing people who are biased in favor of the administration. So I think that's a related issue. And I wish actually that Democratic administrations and Republican administrations did not go along with this practice of ICE removing people from the jurisdiction in which they're seized and moving them to those facilities, for example, in Louisiana. I think that's wrong. It doesn't matter who's president. But in this instance, it's having a particularly pernicious effect, because it's driving some of that litigation into one of the most captured courts in the country.
Yeah. And I should note also that in this case, the VML case we've been talking about, this all happened within Judge Doughty's judicial district as well. And so I don't think it's much of a coincidence, this is my speculation, that it were these particular children in this particular area that the administration targeted, because they thought they had a judge in their pocket right here who would go with them. But he wasn't going along with their wink, wink, nod, nod in this case. And so another thing you mentioned, right, with the forum shopping, why is this presidency different from all others? Well, there's many reasons, but for this specific issue, dude's calling and his allies are calling for the impeachment and worse of Republican judges, who've also said you've gone too far. This isn't just a bunch of Biden, Obama, and Clinton, Carter, whatever judges. No, these are also Republican judges. And now a MAGA judge who, at least for this moment, said, I need more from you than just your assertions and attestations that I can no longer trust. That's where we are. And we need to get past this point to a better place. That's what we are hoping to do by just bringing this out to the viewers here at Legal AF. Letting you guys in on what we're watching, what we're seeing, and how you can pay attention and make sure that we have a democracy that works for all of us, that we have courts that are fair, that aren't corrupt, that heed the rule of law and protect our rights and freedoms.
Yeah. And, and this assault by this administration on the power of the judiciary, the idea that's been asserted by Trump, by Pam Bondi, who, in my view, basically taints the Justice Department with almost every statement she makes in public, attacking our justice system, basically. Trump's spokesperson, this idea that it's not the role of judges to hear cases involving due process of law. Under our Constitution, in at least two parts, both in the 14th Amendment and the main body of the Constitution, our charter document says that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So no person, when the people who wrote the Constitution meant citizen, they wrote citizen. When they meant person, they wrote person. And that has been interpreted for decades, centuries, to include this idea that if you are seized by federal authorities, you have a right to basically seek a writ of habeas corpus. Habeas corpus is also expressly mentioned in the U.S. Constitution. That writ of habeas corpus doesn't go to the executive branch to decide for itself what the rules are. It, by definition, goes to a court. The courts have always been the place where a claim of habeas corpus, meaning release the body, corpus meaning body, release the person or show the evidence that you have for detaining the person. The courts are precisely exactly where those cases are heard. The idea that it's inappropriate for these judges to be hearing cases where people are seized and the evidence against them is contested or non-existent, or the idea that the White House gets to basically try this case in the court of public opinion using Photoshop, these cases, not this case, but using Photoshop and innuendo, information that has never been tested in a court of law, for people who haven't been convicted of any crime. The idea that they just get to assert it and make a determination and courts have no role is an absolute offense against the actual terms of our Constitution, which specifically provide for due process of law, and in the case of the seizure of a person, provide for a court, an independent body, to assess the reason why someone has been ripped from their home and removed, or removed from liberty, and also removed from this country. And so it really is an assault on core foundational principles of this nation.
And Trump 2.0 is hoping that we, the people, aren't watching, that we don't see, that we aren't paying attention, or that at worst, we might even be cheering on this assault because he's targeting people that are unpopular or targeting people that aren't citizens. Well, now he's targeted a 2-year-old, 4-year-old cancer patient and a 7-year-old who are citizens. This is where things are going. So we need to pay attention. We need to make sure that we don't rest until we serve our Constitution, strengthen our democracy, and ensure that we get ourselves back to a place of sanity here in this country. Lisa, I want to thank you for joining. I'm Mike Sachs. This is Legal AF with Court Accountability Action. Hit that subscribe button. Keep watching. Thanks.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.